Yeah, everybody's freaking out about the food disappearing and it's starting to show up in towns across America. And like I predicted 2 years ago, you'd see the food banks run out of food.
We're getting so close to the point that people are going to finally realize that they don't have enough money to get anything, and then they're going to hit us with nothing being there to get.
Why are they telling us to get ready for harder times? I thought the whole thing was about solving all these problems, getting everybody back, getting the economy back. But you see the de-evolution of what was the plan. The plan was the de-evolution of society to reset it. And how far down this course are we? Can you gauge where the world's going? You know, everything seems to be planned. I was working on this video this afternoon where they were talking about they can't get you to eat the insects. They're going to grow the same insects in the same factories that were destined for you and your dinner plate, but they're going to switch it over to the cattle to try to do a soft drip in of you. No, you don't have to eat the insect. No. We're going to feed all the cows, all the pigs, all the chickens, those same insects that you refuse to eat. -10 for your social credit score. I was told I could talk about this information tonight, but I'm just going to read some of the notes from the conversation on July 12th. The balloon shall pop. Visualize a popping balloon. We're in America. We will need wheelbarrows of money like Venezuela, and we still won't be able to get much with it. They're going to try to control things, and I'm talking about at the elite levels, the trading levels, the stock market, the trading houses, the clearing houses, or I should say clearing firms, excuse me. Commodity stocks, bonds, ETFs, they're not going to be able to control it. There's going to be angry men, rooms full of what would be considered upper echelon society, drinking cups of tea, arguing and becoming down to the level of drunken sailors for major decisions. And this major decision is going to trend toward no. So in September, if you hear about a massive thing on the planet where it's going to correct something, it's going to do, this is more like in the middle of September, that it's going to correct something, it's going to do something. And they're pushing this out, it's going to be across the news. Is there going to be a major decision that will decide the fate of our world? I'm telling you already, they're going to trend toward no. Even though the agenda will try to be pushed, it's going to go toward no, a destructive, far-reaching effect, answer and decision to say no. Full evaporation of the market. It could take 3 to 4 years to come back. The holders, as it would be called, would be probably the most affected. Shall I turn the page? Are you still interested? This is all in September of this year, like 2 months from now. The lights go out, screens go black, nothing going on. Major exchanges across the planet, from commodities to stocks to bonds. Screens are black, there's nothing going on. Nobody in there, it's cold. The dip soon, but a meteoric rise in March of 2023. Remember, Friday is September. Fridays could be bank holidays. Could there be problems storing grains? Could there be problems delivering grains? Will the banks fail? Will the clearinghouses fail because they can't deliver? Not sure. It seems that whatever's going to happen will have an all cascading effect that will allow such a collapse that new monetary systems can be put in place. Shapak, welcome to the fall. Happy Thanksgiving and happy whatever end of the year festival. What's coming in September? These are the types of phone calls and information that's out there in the general populace. If I can talk about it, and I was allowed to say, I was very gracious. Thank you for letting me talk about this. I'm allowed to. Never burn your source. That's the first thing. If you ever want to talk to anybody and get it, never burn your source ever, not even once, because once you do it once, you're done. And never burn a source. You tell somebody you're not going to publish something, you tell somebody you will publish, you got it, you must. But it's more important on the other end, where if you tell somebody you're not going to put public information that they've spoken with you in a private conversation, if you do, you have ruined your reputation forever. It never comes back, ever. It never comes back. So never burn your source, because you start to get better information. Then you can ask, well, what can I talk about truly? The world we're heading into is, I don't know, it's on a trajectory, but it could be changed if we have a different power source like Schauberger. Not a lot of people talk about Schauberger, and vortex power, like microhydro, using a vortex to force it down from, say, 10 feet and compress it into several inches, leaving the nozzle that would then spin at incredibly high velocity, your turbine. I mean, yeah, you could let the water just come down and gradually and kind of pool it up and then drop it a few feet and trying to get some force that way. Or you could force it, Schauberger vortex principles. Any stream or river on the planet, it would work. But think about the pipelines being cut off to Europe right now. They're always saying, are they going to turn the pipelines back on? Are they going to turn it on? That kind of decision right now is going to be minuscule if they turn the pipelines back on to Germany compared to what's coming in September. You look at it right now in today's context, right now's context, this whole thing about turning the gas back on to Germany, the largest economy in Europe, if they can't produce, that continent crumbles economically. Okay, that's the kind of magnitude we're talking, but still that's very, very small compared to what's coming in September. Well, you need to trade bags of clothes to get food at the food bank. Because see, here's another thing. Food banks, they give you free food right now. I'm super happy that anybody who needs it can go. And then we have that avenue to help others so they can help themselves, because if they don't have to spend the money on food, they could use it for something else. If you didn't have to buy food, how cheap would your life be now? But here's the thing with the food banks, people go in there, but what if you had to trade clothes out of your closet or trade something from around your property? You had to come with something that could be on traded or on sold in that same kind of city setting or domestic setting. What if there's you just rock up and you get free food anymore? What if you actually have to take something with you to trade for the food as we move forward into these food shortages in September and then October and November, and it's going to get cold and then December and people don't have their coats. But Americans, we got how many stuffs in our closet like stacked a million deep? What if you had to actually trade something to get food, even from a food bank? This is the biggest thing. What could be traded that could be untraded for somebody else in a grid down or an economic distress situation? And I mean, not a few people like it is like strata in society now, but the entire country, because its finance and fiat currency just got wiped out. So everybody's in the same basket. What would be valuable to trade for food then? And I'm not talking about in a barter, like grid down barter. I'm saying still, social services are running, but you're going to trade something to get that food. That's where they're trending next month.
Yeah, everybody's freaking out about the food disappearing, and it's starting to show up in towns across America. And like I predicted 2 years ago, you'd see the food banks run out of food. And now they're blaming inflation.
Why are they telling us to get ready for harder times? I thought the whole thing was about solving all these problems, getting everybody back, getting the economy back. But you see the de-evolution of what was the plan. The plan was the de-evolution of society to reset it. And how far down this course are we? Nothing's going to be fixed on this trajectory, this timeline we are on right this second, unless we change it and we take our planet back. That is at the core of it. Because the way it's going, all countries in unison are all collapsing at the same time. Now, that is not statistically possible. But at the same time, we have a whole new currency system being unveiled across the planet, the BRICS, with their central bank digital currencies. But something's going to settle finally. And what happens when the US dollar is not there anymore? Then what? Then this is where we go to the food banks. And then what happens if they don't have food? Ransom, we talked about this. If inflation's hitting now, and people are saying, wait, I can barely afford food, I'm going to not give any more to the food banks. I need those extra cans of whatever. How's that going to leave everybody else? At what point does the social system not work anymore? It's happening right now. We got months, literally just a couple of months. That's it. Old buildings, seats of power crashing. Not in an earthquake sense, but the sense of rulership by divine right has collapsed. The mandate from heaven, even in what we consider our own societies for anything banking, power structure, government, that entire mandate has been removed at that point, and we are just talking months from now. That's how weird it's going to get, strange it's going to get. I can't equate how it is with the Chinese when they have the mandate removed. The emperor's removed. Emperor is the one that is supposed to supply food, safety, shelter, and life to the subjects in China. Think about any dynasty, the emperors. What's interesting now, I did a fair bit of research on and in China. The Chinese dynasties collapse about every 400 years. But I will make a fact here. No Chinese dynasty has ever lasted longer than 400 years. Now, the Warring States period doesn't count, or Three Kingdoms doesn't count, because, that was a kind of a more divided rulership at that time, different parts of the country of what we know the landmass of China now. Come forward past the Huang dynasty into more the last 3,000 years of time. These things haven't survived. They collapse. And when it does, it always has the same things happen. The food doesn't grow reliably anymore. There's always some drought or some complete floods that create famines because there were not supply chains as we understand them today globally. The marauders would always come. The hordes would come. Great Wall of China, well, it was built over a century to get that thing done. Again, they were waiting for the next one because they followed the cycles in the sky. They understood the Big Dipper called the Beidou Qixing and the way that it moved. Now, here's a fact again. Chinese mystic schools, and it's called the cult of the Big Dipper, the Beidou Qixing, say that consciousness originates from the Big Dipper, a star that is visible in the Big Dipper. So is that a Birkeland current that then comes to another set of stars and then touches our star here called the sun, and then because of our solar system, it affects our Earth? Like, who figured that out back in the day, that a Birkeland current, which would be the seed point of consciousness, you need that current flow to have everything else work on the planet with magnetic fields and orbits in the star. It all needs to have power source somewhere and regulated. But they knew that. Birkeland current from that, what we know as the Big Dipper, came through our spiral galaxy on its wrapped current flow and then touches our star. That's how far back we're going to when we're talking about the Beidou Qixing. Like, you don't have that kind of knowledge unless you're like the Mayans. You're going back millions of years. They always called it the mandate from heaven because they knew that that was the area of heaven that the power for the emperor came from. Now, when that current changes and it steps down, our star called the sun behaves differently in magnetic fields and also solar output, UV output, solar irradiance. Those things are affected, and also the heat of the star that would reach the planet depending on how much cloud covers here. So understanding the mandate from heaven, once that's removed, the emperor could not feed the people, protect the people. And we start to get these repeats. All right, so then you start to understand that this is a cycle, a natural mappable electromagnetic cycle based off of Birkeland currents and at least our regional spiral arm of the galaxy of what is happening here with plasma on an electrical cycle that's mappable. It looks like a heartbeat. Even if you go back to the ice ages, it looks like a heartbeat every 100,000 years. Stretch that out over 25 million years, and you're looking at an EKG off of any monitor that you've ever seen in any hospital. Now shrink it down to the 400-year cycles, and you see the beat, 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 beat. And then also bring it down to the 11.8 year solar cycle of solar maximum and solar minimum. When you look it out, put it out 500 years, you're going to see a heartbeat. You're looking at an EKG screen again. And there's this little device right here, 4-in-1 aircon. Electric companies don't want you to know about this. Put your ice and your water right in here. Turn on the fan and cool down. I use this when I go camping. If we have electric at the campsites, heat pump broke one time. We were waiting for 3 days, 90 degrees here in East Tennessee. Use this in our room and it actually did cool us down, where we could get comfortably to sleep. Turn it on. That hum means cool air coming your way. Learn more by going to easysummercool.com. That link's in the description box below. And now on with the rest of the video. Only electrical can do that and explain solar maximum, solar minimum, not an internally combusting star. It would be constant or close to constant, but not a regular frequency where it stalls and restarts on every 11.8 years. So however small you want to take this, or however long you want to take it into time, from 400 years to 25 million years, the same principles apply. It's just larger, more heavier, powerful cycles. But the resonance and that beat in it, the heartbeat of it, like an EKG, is so prevalent and so easily discernible. That's why they never show you these kind of charts that go back 500 years, 1,000, 2,000, 15,000 years. They always keep you locked in the last like 120 years. And this changed. Our mandate from heaven has been removed in terms of central banking and elite powers will no longer be able to deliver food to the stores or keep what you consider your fiat currency having value enough to buy anything. So at that point, any right to rulership is null and void. Bye-bye. You're gone. History has been shaped by these same cycles. Now it's here in earnest. We're at the point where the elite they're putting their final chess pieces in a line, because if they don't get it now, they're not going to be able to retain control at all. Why do you think all these things have been happening? You can't tell me that since 2019, every country is locked, marched in unison, raising interest rates, cutting off trades, cutting all and closing all small businesses, only leaving mega corporate box stores left open for you to shop at. Because the box stores will tell you what to do. It's a mandate. Oh, it's a store policy. If you don't like it, you can't go in. It's not a law. It's not a national law. It's not a governmental thing. What are you kidding me? It's not even a state law. But the store is going to enforce it. Like mom and pop stores aren't going to enforce it. They'll be like, who cares? But the Costco and the Sam's and the Walmart, they'll enforce it for whoever's trying to lead the show. I could term tonight's episode the full evaporation of the market in September 2022.
We're getting so close to the point that people are going to finally realize that they don't have enough money to get anything, and then they're going to hit us with nothing being there to get. And I'm already seeing that. That's all there is in the headlines, really, is the same thing as last week. They're regurgitating how broke we are, how close we are to war. And I'm sure that you saw that public service announcement for New York from the emergency management agency there in New York, telling people what to do, like a 50s, 60s style duck and cover commercial. Well, I mean, like, really, what are they going to do? Put a blanket on and jump under their desk? It was kind of a joke because, if they nuked a city, there wouldn't be a place safe in it. We've talked about this before. What would actually happen if they took out one of the American cities in a small exchange, or maybe something in the Pacific Ocean? It really wouldn't affect the world overall as far as a working world. And we already know that they've exploded so many of them above ground, in the water, in the atmosphere. We're still here. So that means it's a really powerful tool of fear and destruction that they can use without actually resetting the earth, so to speak. They're just going to reset the one world order there that they've created. And it's so fast, these stages that they're going through. First it was the new world order, and then one world order, and now they're peeping liberal world order. However, they are pulling a lot of power. And what I'm seeing is Europe is dissolving. The European Union is failing, just like it was planned to. A lot of people know it was originally a German Socialist Worker Party plan, the Euro, and it's collapsing because they're trying to tell the people that they need to starve themselves. And what are we seeing just as the basic average American consumer that doesn't get what's going on geopolitically right now? Is they're just seeing everything skyrocket in prices except for their wages. Economists to talk about for a long time that the central banking dollar would necessarily bust eventually. And here we are. They're going to do it first to make it hurt, though, before they totally make it worthless. And they're already ready to jump over to a new digital currency. So I don't think any real players' wealth in the world are going to be hurt at all if we change over to a new system. They'll just absorb it. That's the difference between super rich, middle class, and poor, is that the super rich can just absorb the hit of inflation or monetary failure of any kind. They just absorb it. They have enough property and assets, sway, and political power to just make it through the other end as some other entity. But poor people and middle class will lose everything, because essentially the middle class and very poor will be no different if they can't get groceries. I mean, what's the difference if you're living in a giant house that you don't own versus someone really poor that doesn't own their house? If neither one of you have food, gasoline, electricity, it's starting to look like people are going to have to start making decisions about cutting themselves off from the economy and making their own little small economies. I heard you talking about what you could use for money. And really, if we go back to the way the United States was for a really long time, even when our monetary system was just fine, people were trading mechanical work, tools. Neighbors would always trade food for some meat. They'd give you a bunch of vegetables. And I think we're just going to go back into that kind of a little secret agrarian society until the takers come for us too. And they're eventually going to do that. I don't know. There's millions of people that just have their head in the sand and they have no clue what's about to hit them.
If you're going to talk about New York City, the Guidestones are directly connected to New York City. Factoid, it's 666 miles exactly from the Georgia Guidestones to New York City. Now, where they're measuring in the city, I don't know. Is it right straight downtown at the Bull's Foot or something in the front of Wall Street? I don't know. But anyway, 666 miles from the Georgia Guidestones to New York City. If we brought in a new era by destroying the Guidestones and all those 10 commandments on the whatever fake Guidestones of how the world is supposed to be, were implemented right now. So there's going to be a massive ramp up in those 10. But since we're coming into quote unquote a new era, a new world, a reset world, the financial capital would need to shift. Now, you can take it kicking and screaming where half the world will stay on that side over there and half the world will stay here. Or you could do a nuclear explosion over New York City, the financial capital of the planet, and destroy it in one fell swoop. Not a large one. Ransom has mentioned this a million times, like how many 2,000 plus nuclear explosions over the world here since all of our lives have been alive. All that accumulated, still here, and we're still here. But if you were to put a smaller one to get the effect from the news, just big enough, not too big, just like a Goldilocks of nuclear over a airburst on a city, just the Goldilocks of the airburst sizes. Not too big, not too small, enough all the news cameras can capture it. That would evaporate the entire financial system, and no pun intended here. It would evaporate it as fast as that thing went off in light and glow. And the world would be unanimous in we can't ever go or do business in that place again. There is no more financial capital there. We are going to move it right now to a new place could be anywhere in the BRICS. Where do you think it'll be? You think it'll be in India, China, Brazil, or Russia? Or will each of those nations have their own central bank digital currency, which you'll then need to get their specific CBDC before they integrate it into a single basket that'll be the new reserve currency? But see, switching systems, the Guidestones were a very important thing. That was the mark of the end of the era, that the new era has begun. So I would imagine an all-out onslaught of trying to implement those 10 things. But at the same time, that PSA about New York getting hit with the nuke, it's the only possible way it could be done. The financial capital needs to move, but everybody needs to know it. There can be no stragglers left behind on a new financial system or reset or movement of capitals. Like, remember, it was in London and then it came to New York. Well, it's going to move. It's no longer in London. It ain't going back. It's in New York, but it ain't coming back. So where's it going to, Ransom? I don't know. Where do you think the new financial capital will be?
I think if they did that, they would probably recenter the financial center for at least the American district, probably in Denver, close to Colorado Springs, because of the hardcore establishment that's in Colorado Springs, which is Space Command, and they have an Air Force base there. But if you look under the shadows there, you realize that entire city is just ran by military industrial complex companies. So I imagine it would be something like Denver or Nashville, where they have something set up So the idea that the financial system would fall, they kind of foreshadowed that with 9/11, because we had the trade centers there, the two trade centers, the World Trade Centers, plural, and that got knocked down and replaced with something that looks like Cleopatra's Needle called the One World Trade Center, which just happens to shine light in the early morning over to the empty squares where the other two buildings were. And it's a weird blood sacrifice that they made the entire world participate in. And there's a lot more esoteric symbology, excuse me if I could talk, with 9/11. Columbia, it's represented in the past as other female goddesses over time, and there's usually three of them. Matter of fact, they planned on that being a three-piece monument with three women, one of them holding a sword and a torch and maybe a book. It's really esoteric stuff. But when you look at it, the new goddess was taking over in the time of Aquarius. See, she's out there in the water. It's the water bearer. But she witnessed the two towers fall on the 9th month, which is the amount of time it takes for a woman to have a birth. So they gave birth to the one world order on September 11th, 2001. And you can see how we've gotten here from there. And all of these little steps don't seem like much to the public, but these are big deals in the esoteric circles. And with the elite, they always have a ceremony behind every event. Just take the Trinity site, for example. They did a whole Crowley sigil there, and I talked about this last night. These are crazy people that thought they were going to blow up the entire world, or at least ignite the atmosphere where everyone would die. But they were okay with that because they thought they were going to open a portal to somewhere else to let something in. And I know we talk a lot about that, but Crowley, if you read into his beliefs and stuff, he's a pretty sick individual, but he does say that he did make contact with some other kind of being through weird meditations and stuff like that. And, his sigils that he learned over time from these esoteric places like Blavatsky, and a lot of them were studying the Vril and the Thule Society. And they still use all this stuff, but it's right in front of our face. So the idea that 3:33 in the morning and the witching hour, they blew up the Georgia Guidestones that explicitly kind of flaunt the idea of world reduction and population, and the fact that a Marxist agenda would take over a world government, a world court. It's not that it just started. That's the sign that they're well into it and it's going along as planned. The culling is happening everywhere. And now the world government is trying to tell countries to shut down food production at a time when they're also saying, oh, well, this disease that went around made, shortages happen and distribution lines have problems. And now we got wars in different places. So you might have to get used to not eating. This is going to be the most polite culling ever on the planet.
How easy is to push the button to reset a society? Like, if you go back to some of the Sumerian tablets and stories or whatnot, they were sitting off Earth watching the cataclysms happening, just super sad, crying that it was happening to humanity. But others were like, nah, they're nothing more than cockroaches. Get rid of them. We'll start again. We can make a whole new batch once this thing's over, this natural cycle's over. We'll just make a new batch. Who cares? Just let them multiply again, whatever. We'll set up the conditions to perceive reality as freedom and make them start working again for stuff, and they'll keep working for us.